Hi, welcome to the log demonstration for the REPRIEVE project in OpenClinica. I'm Anthony, I work at the DMC. I'm going to be demonstrating to you the functionality of logs, some frequently asked questions about logs, some features of logs, and just how to use logs in general for the study. I have a fake study set up. It's modeled just after REPRIEVE, but just fake data, fake subjects. It's set up so that some subjects have some data entry done. It looks like they're further along in the study. And then we have subject 1005 down here, which is going to be the main discussion point of this, which is set up like a newly enrolled subject or a newly randomized subject. So the first thing you'll notice about any subject, specifically newly enrolled subjects, is that this logs visit, the logs visit here is located between the entry and month 1 visits. This logs visit is this orange color, and that orange color represents the icon or status icon of data entry started, as you can see over here on the left side. Data entry started. We're doing this because it's also going to remain data entry started throughout the duration of the study for the subject until the subject goes off study, at which point you can, close out the logs. However, we're setting it as data entry started, and we're leaving it as data entry started until that point because we want to emphasize the point that you should be going back to these forms. You should be going back to the logs and reevaluating the logs at every visit at a minimum. So we're going to go ahead and go into the logs visit for subject 1005, located right here. All we have to do is click on this icon, click view or enter data, and as you can see popping up is this screen. This little section right here, it's not important at all. It just has some subject information and some visit information. You can minimize that if you don't like seeing it, but it's not really important at all. But this is what it looks like to be inside the visit for a subject, particularly the logs visit. Right now you can see 5 logs. You can see the adverse events log, where any kind of adverse events, clinical events are going to be entered onto for the study. The medications log, which covers the study treatment and the concomitant medications. And there's also the key protocol deviations log. That we'll cover lightly when we touch on that topic. There's the pre-existing medical conditions log, which is done at entry, and if it just asks about a particular set of pre-existing conditions that the statisticians or team want us to follow up on. And then there's also the pregnancy outcome log, which, unless your subject becomes pregnant and there is an outcome for that pregnancy while they're on study, you won't ever need to touch. All right, we'll start off with, I'll just actually show you this overlay of this whole thing real quick. Each form here has different little columns associated with it. There's a version number of the form. There's the status of the form. The status is, started, not started. Not started is this light blue icon, as I highlight over it, not started. Started would be the orange icon, and green would be completed. It'll say who did the initial data entry. Double data entry, we don't use that. It's just there. And then there's the actions you can take with the forms. The 3 actions are, the first one with a pen and paper is enter data. The second one with a little magnifying glass is viewing data, or just viewing the form. And the third one is printing the either completed or non-completed form. However the form is at that moment, and you hit print, it will print it out like that. We're going to go into the adverse events log for the subject. We're going to do some data entry here. I want to cover in this section the purpose of the review date. Get a lot of questions about the function of the review date, why the review date operates the way it does. So the review date operates the way it does. Here's how it operates. Every time you have, at a minimum, every time a subject comes in for a visit, you should be updating the adverse events log review date, whether they have a adverse event or not. So whether question 2 is answered yes or no, were there any adverse events experienced, you update this review date. The review date is purely a function of making sure for the statistician to kind of have a check to make sure that you are going in and updating the logs at every visit. Events are particularly important for this study, so it's very important to the statisticians and for the analysis that we know that you're going in and looking at the subject's record and affirming to us by entering a new review date that this is the latest information about these events at that time point. So you can see also on the forms, they're laid out with instructions on top. There's always this save and exit right here, and there's always a save and exit right there. They do the same function, these saves and exits. It's just kind of redundant to have two. You'll see that there's question numbering, question 1 and 2. Some forms have numbering, some forms don't. Some sections have numbering, some don't. It depends on the form. You can also see that there's these little orange stars or asterisks next to these fields. That little orange asterisk indicates a required field, so it's indicating that data entry needs to be done for this field in order for you to save this field. There's also this flag, which is for a discrepancy note, which we'll cover at a later discussion point. But for right now, if my new subject comes on study, we're doing a data entry for this form at the entry visit. We're going to type in our review date, not even type it in. You can click on that little calendar, and you can just select June 22nd. That's our entry visit date, and then we're going to say, were there any adverse events experienced? For our subject, we're going to say no. As you can see, these fields, they changed color from white to yellow. That's trying to indicate to you that there's unsaved data in this field. So currently, as this form exists right now, it's not like it saves as you type in. You have to hit the save button in order to commit these fields to be saved. Also, you can kind of tell with these orange icons, it tells you if you hover over them, data has been entered but not saved. So we're going to go ahead and save our data. And we're going to be kicked around to the section B, which is the actual log for the adverse events log. Again, you see the same instructions here. They're more specific to this section here. And you're going to see a lot of fields. There are a number of fields for this. A couple of key features about this. The adverse event log has the function to add lines this way. And you can see as you add lines, you would follow one event. Say this is hypertension, a newly diagnosed hypertension. You could go through on the right and continuously add data for that diagnosis of hypertension if they had it. Additionally, if they had a second event besides just the hypertension at that visit, say they were diagnosed with diabetes as well, you would add the diabetes here. And you would continue and add all the other information for this, when it started, when it stopped, if it's serious, all that criteria. Another thing I want to show you real quick is that every time we hit that add button, we get in this field the adverse event identifier, and it populates a new number, number in this sequence. The adverse event identifier, while not particularly important on the adverse events log, does become important should the adverse event be a clinical event, because we use the adverse event identifier to tie together clinical events between different forms as we track them. So once you have a adjudicated clinical event, you'll get it a bit more what the purpose of the adverse event identifier is, but just know that it's a identifier and it ties together the forms, and that's how you're kind of tracking for the statistician and for the adjudication team and for the team in general. This event ties to some supplemental information collected on a specific, say, stroke form, and it carries on that way. But again, this form, you can continue adding log lines. Again, if you didn't have 7 events or 6 events at the first visit, you're going to want to get rid of all those. Before you save, you have this option all the way on the right. There's these little boxes that you can check to get rid of these log lines. And again, it's only before you save that these are really able to be clicked. After you saved, you can't remove a log line like that. You can only remove the data from the log line. The log line is stuck because you did save and say, hey, I had an adverse event. Another point I want to go over about the adverse events log is the importance of this is the adverse event serious question. If the subject is not, or if the event is not serious, there's some supplemental questions about the serious criteria. So you'll see here, did the serious adverse event result in death? We try to indicate to you if serious, select one. You'll see that in the blank status here, that you shouldn't really be answering this question if you answered this question, is the adverse event serious, as a no. You should only be answering this question, did the serious adverse event result in death, if you answered, is the serious adverse event yes. However, if we're going to say no, we don't answer this, we don't answer this, and there's a number of them. You can continue to see them right here that you would not answer until you get to the standard select one here for outcome. Again, there is unsaved data on this form, but we were just demonstrating we're not really saving data this time, which you can do. You can go in and and look at a form and not really enter any data. So you can just continue on if you want to. You'll get a little warning, as you see right here. You have unsaved data. Are you sure you want to go to another section without saving? In that case, we do, because we don't want to save any of that. This section right here, section C, in order to emphasize the point that you should not be saving this form as complete until this subject goes off study, because you can continue to follow adverse events for this subject until they go off study, that you should not be marking it as complete. See this little button, mark as complete? Do not mark as complete for the adverse events log or the medications log until the subject goes off study, because they can continue to have any changes in medications or continue to have events until they go off study that we need to follow. So we added this little section here, and what this section does is it doesn't allow you to type anything in this field, this date off study field. Instead, what happens is when you have a date off study form, or when you have an off study form entered, which is in the PRN visit in the subject matrix, it should automatically populate the date off study into that field. If you just click on it, it should just pop in there, and it should load. We don't have one, obviously, and then you'd be able to mark as complete and save. Alright, so we're done doing data entry for this form. As you can see, we didn't really enter anything besides this review date and this no, but that's all we needed to enter, and we already saved this because we can see that it's white now. So we can exit out, and you can see now that our status for the adverse events log changed to this data entry started icon. And we're going to go ahead and we're going to continue keep doing the logs. The three important logs to do are the adverse events log, the medications log, and the pre-existing medical conditions log. We'll do the medications log. We'll do data entry for that. As you can see, the review date is here again. Same functionality as the adverse events log. You want to update this every time you have a subject come in for a visit, at a minimum. Anytime you even have contact with the subject and there's a change, if they confirm a change to you, you can even update it then. But again, we're just going to say, click on the calendar. We're going to say today, June 22nd, 2016, we reviewed their medications, and we would save. And our data would be committed. And you can see that little pop up, your data has been saved. You can continue entering data now. Now we'd be in section B. Section B covers pitavastatin, or the placebo for pitavastatin. You are going to enter treatment start and stop dates here. So essentially, if your subjects, today say is the randomization day and the enrollment visit day, we dispensed the medication to the subject. However, we don't know that the subject will actually start the pill tomorrow. So I would not want to put a date here until I know the date that they actually started the medication. So you either have to, call and contact the subject, or wait until the month 1 visit when they affirm to you, yeah, I started the day after I had my enrollment visit. That's when I started taking my pill. And that's where you'd enter the treatment start date. If they stop the medication for duration, as you'll see here, there's duration for at least 7 consecutive days. That's when you'd enter a stop date. And say if they started the medication again after that, this is a log. You can add lines to this. And if they have a dozen starts and stops over the study, you can add them, as you can see here. But right now, we're not going to enter any data in that field. We don't have any data to enter. Oh, I forgot to show you the section C. Section C is the medications portion, the concomitant medications portion. This is narrowed down. The team and the stat decided they really wanted very certain categories or indications for use here. So there you can see here like anti-diabetic medication or antihypertensive medication. So you're only going to enter medications if they fit one of these categories of use. So if a subject is using, a bad example, maybe a diabetic medication for something other than a diabetes diagnosis, then you would not enter that onto this form. If they are taking it for diabetes, you of course would enter the medication and categorize it as anti-diabetic medication. The term is just the name of the pill. there's combination pills for ARTs, things like that. You're just entering the name of the pill. You don't have to enter the individual drugs on individual log lines. Again, same functionality as the other logs. You can add a line, you can add a drug, and of course you can come over here and remove them. So you'll give the name of the medication. You'll say if it was taken prior to study or after the start of study. And then you can also do the start date and stop date. The dates here, you can, if you only know the year or month and year that a medication was started, you can enter just those. So say if I knew he started it in June of 2015, I could enter June of 2015. And that's all I have to enter for that. I don't have to estimate a day. I don't have to say mid-June, anything like that. I just know it's June 2015, and I don't have a day. All I enter is June 2015. I don't have a day. At the same time, if I didn't know it was June, if they, had no record of what month it was done, all you have to do is enter the year of the medication started, and that's all that'd be required for that. Alright, I think we sufficiently covered the medications log. We can exit out of here. No, we don't need to save that data. Again, all we really did was save for section A. We're going to go back into our visit for our subject, and we're going to go to the pre-existing medical conditions log. We're going to do some data entry for that log. This log, you can see right away there's this mark CRF complete box here. So this log should automatically give you the indication that you could mark this as complete if it meets the criteria for marking it as complete. So question 1, has the subject experienced any past and or concomitant diseases or past surgeries? And we're looking at these right here. Hypertension, diabetes, these specific things. And if they have diabetes currently, then you'd say yes. And you'd give a day, because today is enrollment, we'd say the enrollment date, and we'd continue on saving. It would open up another section, and we would enter, like the adverse events log, we'd enter information about that diagnosis of diabetes. However, if it's no, if they never had any kind of, if they don't currently have a hypertension diagnosis, then we'd say no here, and we'd say we affirm that information on June 22nd, today, and all we'd have to do is say, because there could not be any pre-existing conditions after entry, we could save this form as complete. It's only if you have a pre-existing prior to entry and you have something entered onto this form that you do not save this form as complete. So it's more in your hands than the other two forms leave it. So because we're saying no and we gave our date there, we can mark this as complete. We get a little pop-up box that says marking this complete finalizes the data entry. Basically saying, giving your affirmation to this is saying, yes, the data I'm entering into the database is correct. And then you could hit save, and it'll save your data. And as you can see here, our icon for that one is this green completed. You never have to go back to that form again. You're done with it forever. The only ones you'd continuously update here are your adverse events log and your medications log. The other two logs here. Again, these come up in certain scenarios, and we made them logs because it's more convenient to capture the data that way, because you can have multiple key protocol deviations throughout the study for a subject, and you can have multiple pregnancy outcomes for a subject throughout the duration of the study. So we made them logs that way, so you wouldn't have to enter one form randomly whenever it occurred. So I'll show you these forms. We're not going to do data entry for them. So the key protocol deviations log, there is a section in the MOPS. It's at the end of the MOPS. I won't say what section because that could change in the next few years. That specifies critical events, and you'll see the section where a key protocol deviation can come up. That's kind of the prompt for this form. So if you have to indicate that a key protocol deviation occurred, then you would enter the key protocol deviation here as well as submitting that form to the REPRIEVE KPD group. This form is very simple. It has the start of the deviation, end of the deviation. It has what type of deviation it is, and we kind of use these different categories than the critical events forms does. We want it more narrowed down what exactly you're saying occurred. So if there was a if there was an inadvertent overdose. If the subject had taken, between entry and month 1, had taken 2 pills a day instead of 1, then you'd use inadvertent overdose, and then you'd describe what happened, why it happened. And that's what you'd use for that. It's a very simple log. Again, you can add lines for each protocol deviation that occurs. And you will see that marks here off complete box there. Don't do it until the end of the study, but we're not limiting you there, though. We're going to hit exit here and go to the pregnancy outcome log. This log, if your subject gets pregnant and there is an outcome to that pregnancy, this is the only time you will touch this form. You have no reason to touch this form otherwise. It can stay not started for the entire subject for your, or for the entire study for your subject otherwise. But if your subject does become pregnant and there's an outcome, you'd enter the date of the outcome, gestational age, the type of outcome, and then if other, you'd specify what the other is. And of course, you can, if there's multiple pregnancies during the study, you can continue on like that. But we're going to exit out. All right, that's logs for the demonstrational logs. If you have any questions or if there's anything you think might need to be added, please give me an email. Contact me at reprieve.dmc@fistrif.org. You'll see the email on all sorts of calls. So any questions, send them that way, and I can update this if anything could be clarified further.